Again, 7, the magic number. The first one being body fit. So accommodating a wide range of body sizes and abilities, right? So we have to think about different sizes, different mobility function within the use of these principles. Comfort. So this would be keeping the demands of an interaction within desirable limits of body function. So keeping it comfortable, not too much of a stretch or a reach to accomplish whatever that particular task might be. Awareness, ensuring that critical information for use is easily perceived. So that also kind of links a little bit over to the universal design for learning idea, making sure that that information that's being communicated about it is able to be received, receptive knowledge, right? Let's see, we've got wellness, and that's contributing to health promotion, avoidance of disease, prevention of injury. So we don't want to cause harm, do no harm. Social integration, treating all groups with dignity and respect. So making sure that we have that cultural knowledge and that cultural awareness involved as well. Across all the ways that applies. Personalization, so incorporating opportunities for choice and the expression of individual preference. So people can modify things to or use it in a way that is able to express their individuality. And then again, cultural appropriateness, respecting and reinforcing cultural values, social, economic, and environmental context of any design project, And then just wellness is another one of the goals of UD, just not wellness, understanding, making the methods of operation of whatever it might be intuitive, clear, and unambiguous, which is also going back to a little bit to that universal design for learning and making sure that the way we interact is appropriate for someone's learning style. There's also a lot of benefits of UD and work that we're going to talk about. UD can omit the need for accommodations. We talked about it being a precursor to accommodation, but it can also just eliminate the need to provide accommodation, right? Since we've kind of removed some of the barriers. That's one of the ultimate outcomes of universal design. That's so beautiful. It doesn't incorporate the stigma of having to request an accommodation. And also accommodations can take a lot more time to implement and effort and even cost, right? To have someone come carry out the entire process of doing the assessment, which we'll talk more about probably too. So it takes away that stigma and it makes it more immediate. And then also really does address the issues, many of the issues of our aging workforce. Of our aging workforce. So yeah, going back to the stigma a little bit though, people can feel like there's a negative coworker attitude because they're perceived as receiving special benefit. We talk about that a lot in work and having accommodation, and even what the ADA provides for people as protection, but that's not true, and we know that, but we want to remove that stigma as much as possible. So we'll talk a little bit more about universal design for learning. We've talked about cognitive skills, and so this idea is just having a difference in learning style, which we all have, right? Universal design for learning is the branch of universal design that delivers the principles into our expression of information and reception of information. So the ideas behind universal, or the benefits, are that it provides flexibility for how we receive and express information. It reduces barriers in conveying information. Considers the needs, again, of the broadest array of principle, that basic function of universal design. And it has to be intentional from the start. So we're building it into how we are creating and developing materials. So multiple means of expression, right? We all express in different ways. This is providing learners with various ways to show what they know, and it supports planning. So it gives choices for people to convey their understanding of what was said. Learners differ in the ways that they navigate a learning environment and express what they know. And this is certainly true in work, especially when we're asking people to learn a whole lot about something like technology in order to continue participating in that workforce. And then also, like we referenced, the multiple means of representation. So people receive or grasp information quickly or more efficiently through visual or auditory means rather than printed text. Some people do. Other people prefer printed text, right? We all learn in different ways, and so that representation of materials allows us to make a connection with that material in a more meaningful way for us. So we know that there's not one means of representation that's optimal for all learners or all workers. So providing options for representation is really essential to effective and successful communication. And so this is in multimedia, using UDL principles in how we're sharing materials, within a workforce and within a team, making sure that we're providing clear information and clarifying as we need to. Explaining jargon. I know in our field we use a whole lot of acronyms, so being sure to always give the actual words of what that acronym means. Offering alternatives, so offering video, offering infographic for some people is really the best way, and then also offering the text, offering it in an auditory way, so having that text translate to speech so people can hear it is most useful for some people. And then always being sure to highlight the big ideas, right? And so making those, use bullets. They always say to use more bullets than you usually use, but highlighting what the big ideas are. And then we have multiple means of engagement, the why of learning. So engagement in UDL is the hook, so it's the motivator. And it's also showing respect for learners and preferences for interaction, right? So providing flexibility, how do you share information? Minimize distractions. When we're trying to engage with something, we need to minimize the distractions around it. So making sure we're paying attention to the environment as well. And, as people have maybe vision disability or hearing disability, they're more reliant on the other, right? And so we have to make sure that we're minimizing the auditory distraction and visual distractions. And then promoting expectations that optimize that motivation, right? That hook for learning. Facilitate personal coping skills and strategies. So yeah, finding the ways that we can help someone learn what their mean of engagement is and how that is most effective for them, and then helping to create that environment and facilitate that environment for them. So yeah, again, there's not one means of engagement that's optimal for all learners in all contexts. So providing multiple options for engagement is essential. And so there's a lot of different contexts in which we need to be sure that we are making these considerations and providing these options for people, right? So in trainings, and again, there are a lot of trainings happening right now and a lot more people attending trainings. So the rates of even attendance to something that we've signed up for have increased exponentially during the times of COVID. So making sure that we have considered universal design for learning within those training contexts. Within group learning environments and all that, we discussed about removing some of those additional distractions and making sure that we have universal design built into those environments. We're going to go through some more specific examples on how to do that. And then in our resource development, all of our even software programs now have accessibility checkers where we can be sure that we have considered, contrast issues and that we have our images tagged and, addressing a lot of accessibility things within our resource development, but considering these other universal design for learning concepts to make sure we're representing different types of engagement, different means of expression and reception for that information that we're trying to convey. And then, just an information sharing with anyone. So with clients out in the workforce, with our coworkers, with potential employees. And so making sure that that information is going to be accessible in all of those ways to the widest array of people. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly to talk a little bit about what some of these examples are in the workplace and how UD in the workplace really does eliminate the need for accommodation in a lot of situations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Christina. That was great information. And it's UD in the workplace is something that that we see in workstations that people use individually and also in a shared manner. We also see it in the work site in general. So the entire environment, we're going to give some specific examples from the parking lot to break areas. And technology, you talked a lot about that, Christina, as far as technology and in the workplace, how can we make that universal design accessible to the broadest array of individuals? And the one area that was really impactful to me as far as universal design was work policies and procedures. I think we think of an environment as being accessible, but making policies and procedures accessible and utilizing universal design to do that is a way that we can provide that in the workplace as well. So let's talk about some more specific examples in the next few slides. So universal design in the workplace can be an automated door to the building, one that's close to parking or public transportation. Having counter heights for workstations that are adjustable so they can fit somebody who's 6 feet tall as well as someone who's 5 feet tall, right? So people who have varying statures and visual abilities. Also, another example of universal design in our workplaces is providing cubicles or other devices that workers can have control over the level of noise that is in that workplace. And I think that's something that right now we're working from home as well. I see a lot of people using Bluetooth devices or earbuds as well to control some of the extraneous noise that might be going on in their work from home environment. And then designated break areas that provide comfort and, again, quiet space to allow individuals a place to, recover and rest from work demands, and also an area where they can socialize with others in the workplace during that break time. So those are all things that we want to be able to look for in the workplace as far as universal design concepts. Let's go ahead and talk about some more examples. And sound absorbent materials on the walls and floor will allow that ambient noise to not be as obvious and get rid of some of that background noise. Again, I keep going to work from home and remote examples, but right now that's really all of our lives, right? And I was on a WebEx last week with an individual because they were having some work done in their house. He was actually doing the WebEx from his garage, and you really could hear that ambient noise, right? You can imagine a garage doesn't have any carpeting or didn't have the absorbent material. So it was definitely very obvious and really made me think about universal design and how important that is in the workplace. Another way that we can provide universal design to individuals in the workplace is by minimizing any, lifting, carrying, push, pulling, rolling, by providing storage containers or ways that they can do that, that they can roll that and not have that, that lifting that they would otherwise. And Christina mentioned adjustable work surfaces as well, and making sure that those are between 28 and 32 inches. Put those frequently used items within arm's reach so that the individual isn't having to, reach far across a workstation to access an object or to do some sort of repetitive motion that they would otherwise. And make sure that those accessibility options are present on computers and mobile technologies as well, so that everybody has that universal design available to them. We talked about the the workstation being between 28 and 32 inches, but we also want to look at things like light levels in the workspaces as well, and allowing people to adjust the light level in addition to volume levels. And so we want to make sure that those individual abilities and preferences are accommodated. A wheeled chair with adjustable height or seat, in having that reclining tilt function, that lumbar support, the armrest, if they need that high back support for their neck and head, that's really something that's important. I was talking to a friend actually yesterday, and she was sharing at the beginning of the pandemic, she was using a card table and a card table chair for her work from home office. And I thought to myself, boy, that's about as far removed as you can get from universal design, right? But fortunately, she has a good outcome and was able to purchase the wheeled chair with the adjustable height seat and the reclining tilt function. So that is something that she was able to implement universal design in her work from home environment. We want workstations where individuals can communicate effectively, visually as well as verbally. So we want to look at that in our universal design concepts, and be able to accommodate both sitting and standing positions, so that the workstations can be used however that individual needs to use it. A lot of the individuals that I've worked with throughout my career will have back injuries or disabilities, and they need the ability to be able to alternate sit stand. And so by having those workstations that can accommodate both of those, and that they can move it during the day to accommodate that, that's very important and is a great example of universal design.
Yeah, and Kimberly, what you said about your friend, I mean, that is very real right now. Many of us, all of us at HDI, are working remotely, and so even if we did have some universal design built into our, our workstation in our offices or in our other workspaces, coming home and kind of on such a short notice, a lot of us and a lot of people, across with our colleagues, don't have these things built in right now. So this is certainly something, as this might continue for a little bit longer, that we need to make sure that we are addressing across our workspaces and with our clients, right? So making sure that we are talking with our leadership about what we might be able to do, or creating some of these tip sheets for our particular agencies or our employers, to make sure that people are addressing these things, because it really does have an effect on our aging population, but also on us and our colleagues, and how our positioning and our seating and our otherwise supported bodies are able to continue to be productive.
Yes, very much so. As far as common areas, we talked about break areas, but also looking at universal design in common areas, you will find that with those concepts, drinking fountains are grouped with other restroom amenities in the universal design concept. So it's a easier go-to. We want to look for directional signage so that those cues are available throughout the building. We talked about lighting at an individual workstation, but we also want to make sure that the lighting is good along outdoor pathways as well, not just at individual workstations and coming into the building, but outside as well. And for this time of year, right now, where we have very short days, that's very important. A lot of us, when we do return to work, will be going into work when it's dark and leaving work when it's dark. So the lighting is very important in the universal design concept in those common areas. And we want those nodes along the pathways to be able to light the way so people can see where they need to go. And also those common areas would include those resting places throughout the site, not just the break rooms, but any other areas where an employee or a worker can go just to have a few minutes of quiet and rest. So we need to look at it in a very comprehensive manner and make sure it's not exclusive to an individual's workstation, but from the time they basically step into the work environment until the time they leave. We want to look at that universal design concept.
Yeah, and just another quick way that, just our area of lighting is more universally designed now than 10 or 20 years ago is all these motion detected lights, right? So we enter a space and the lights come on. That's a universal design in action because it's happening for everybody without the requirement of any sort of physical activation. So that's pretty cool too.
That's a great example. Thank you for that. So a few more in common areas. We want restrooms appropriately sized so it can accommodate large numbers of users at the same time. It's a little contraindicated to COVID right now, but I think needing those restrooms that are appropriately sized and larger so that we aren't, close in proximity right now is important as well. We want signs within sight lines in that universal design concept, as well as alternative languages in addition to English. And we also see the universal design will have the tactile and visual warning surfaces. And again, just to kind of take it a step further, we also are seeing landscaping features, including fences and walls, as used as guidance for individuals to get to those key destinations within environments. And this is particularly important in the workplace as well.
Yeah, I just noticed we had a couple of comments in the chat. So Amber Barnes noted that she's a wheelchair user and working from home, and thankfully her employer delivered an elevated desk to her home, which allows her to comfortably complete her work. So that's a great example of adjusting to our current times.
So one of the things that Christina and Walt and I were talking about as we were preparing for this is looking at universal design for presentations and seminars and meetings and events. And so some of the things that if you are hosting or a participant, you want to look at space management. And, just as we talked about on the previous slide, having enough space that users can move around comfortably and fit into that area. Just like lighting in the workstation or lighting outside, or the example that Christina just gave with lighting and sound is also important for meetings and events, and universal design definitely needs to be incorporated into that. We want to look at safety and security, obviously across the board, but for meetings and events as well, and transportation. Another area is marketing materials and communication once you get on site for those meetings and events, as well as resources that are provided to you during that event. So these are things that, again, if you are hosting an event or a participant, are going to be very important and should be considered when you want to incorporate universal design into that meeting. So registration accommodations, again, as a host or as a participant, you want to consider, does somebody need an interpreter or an assisted listening device for their participation in this meeting or event? And if so, make sure that you consider those in the registration process, as well as any captioning, large print materials prior to, during, or after the event that can be provided. You will have an opportunity to provide notes or other materials in advance of that meeting as well as after the meeting. So consider that in the registration accommodations as well. Wheelchair access is another area that would be considered, as well as dietary restrictions or even accommodations that may not be for the participant, but might be for somebody who's accompanying that participant in that event. So just some things to think about Again, if you're hosting or if you're somebody who it might need accommodations or might be assisting someone who might need accommodations, and how that can take place as part of the universal design, again, for a meeting or an event. And Christina, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Here I am. We're going to talk through some practical applications of AT. So first, to talk about document accessibility. We are all creating documents these days. And hopefully you all know that there are built-in accessibility checkers. So all Microsoft products have a built-in accessibility checker now. So take the time, regardless of if you're using Office 365 or a downloaded version, full version of the software, take the time to find where that accessibility checker is. There are videos galore learning how to do that, but it provides some really good feedback on how to make your documents more accessible prior to sending them out. And especially as those of us that work for agencies or facilities that work with people with disabilities, we have a responsibility to be doing that before we're sending out documents to make sure they're accessible. Watch for color contrast. Color contrast can also be checked online. I included a link to one of the easy tools through WebAIM. So the webaim.org resources contrast checker link there. You can check the contrast of your documents or of any web pages too. Use simple terms and language. So this is also called plain language. We'll talk a little bit more about that in an upcoming slide too. But take out the unnecessary words. Use common terms and make information clear. Avoid using acronyms. Spell things out as much as you can. Acronyms get so confusing in our world. So yeah, just avoid them as much as possible. And then make sure that you're using descriptive alt text for all visuals. So that means that people with a screen reader can also access the information that you're sharing through visual or pictorial additions into your document, right? So that's changing the alt text to make sure. There are a lot of ways that software is creating automatic alt text, but we always want to go back and check that too, because sometimes it's not accurate, sometimes it's not descriptive within context of your document. Let's see. Use graphics and icons. So Microsoft Word now has an icon library available. Another website is emojipedia.org. It's an online encyclopedia of emojis. But again, make sure that all of those graphics and icons have really descriptive alt text. Choose so that people with vision impairment can also receive that information. Choose large, easy to read fonts. Individual preference might vary, but in general, Verdana, Helvetica, and Avenir are good choices. Use at least a 10-point font for documents and a 24-point font for presentations. Use bullets to make lists. Bullets give you a clear visual understanding of what the heading is and what falls under it, right? So it gives some context there to being able to understand that information. And then have people preview your documents. You know, getting that second set of eyes and doing that for one another is a really helpful way to make sure that we're eliminating some of the things that are confusing. As the person who creates a document, you don't always recognize what those things are. So to talk a little bit more about plain language use, you guys have probably heard this quite a bit lately. In the last several years, there's been a lot more focus on plain language, but it's clear, concise, well organized. So it's the key best practice these are the key best practices for writing in plain language. Choosing words that are common and easy to understand. Avoiding run-on sentences, so clear, short sentences and paragraphs. Write an active voice instead of passive voice. And then I've included some links here. So the checklist for plain language on the web is provides some really good resources about how to be sure and how to practice writing plain language. And then there's also the 5-step checklist provided by the Center for Plain Language. There's a whole center for it. It's very important. And so it's a really good resource to review and kind of up your game with the use of plain language. There's also several tools on the internet where you can check for the grade level that your document is written at. And so depending on your audience, you want to be sure to implement these tips and tools to bring down that grade level so it is more understandable, right, by the greatest number of people. That's our goal for creating materials, is for people to understand what we're trying to present. So these are some good resources to be able to do that. We'll talk about a little bit of AT, assistive technology for environmental control. So, this is really just a brief overview on some ways that we can control our environment. This is not at all a comprehensive overview on all that's out there, but just to talk about Google Home or Amazon Alexa, right? These are amazing tools that we have now that can really help to level the playing field through the use of technology that is available off the shelf and available to, to everybody, that has some of that intuitive use built into it. And that addresses a lot of the UD principles. So the vision, the images here that we're showing are of both it's the Alexa Show. So both of the options for Google Home and Alexa that have the screen, right? But these can be used for medication management, to schedule reminders. They can be used to get access to the news. They can be used for calendar appointments and reminders about activities or events coming up. You can practice cognitive games. So obviously this list of things is in consideration of our aging population. Cognitive games to keep our brain more active. There's lots of research showing the benefits of that. Can be used to control your television or your audio devices. Can be used for smart homes, right? So as our physical capacities are becoming diminished, or we've acquired a disability, we can use them to control our locks and make sure our doors are locked. We can use them to integrate with video doorbells, so we can see from whatever position we are within the house who is at our house, if we want to unlock the door for them and let them in, or even to just converse back and forth from the door. We can access security cameras and control security cameras with these devices. They can control outdoor sensor lights or outdoor lights. They can control thermostat. Some disability requires a pretty refined temperature control. And so to even be able to adjust that, whether or not relates to disability, just with the use of voice or one of these touchscreen devices. They can control smart plugs, so we can plug in appliances, or our lighting, and so also activate those, or Wi-Fi lights. There are automatic blinds that we can use, that we can set to timers, or that we can adjust and have open or close with our voice. There are even smart microwaves and smart ovens. We have at our AT Center, we have some of these set up for demonstration, where you can control your microwave through one of these devices to tell it maybe your vision is declining, and so you can't see the buttons, or they're difficult to push. You can just say, heat up my coffee, and have that programmed for a 30-second microwave session. They can interact with conduction tops, make sure that we're keeping ourselves and our elderly, maybe family members or aging workforce safer, right? Smart fridges, they interact with those, and they can tell you what you have used up, how to know what to order from the grocery store, or even interface with some of our click lists or pickup or delivery options. So there's just so many ways that we have access to technology now that is available off the shelf to all of us, that can help with maintaining independence, with interaction socially, with interaction in the workforce, and all of the life areas that are really exciting. You can also do hands-free calling and messaging, so as a social mechanism, but also as a safety and security mechanism. And then also you can access, ride share and transportation. You can check the weather, all of these little things. And you can even geofence. So as I have set up on my smartphone, when I enter my driveway, my geofence unlocks my front door. So just for myself with small children and lots of bags, pre-COVID more so, but coming into the house, didn't have to find a little key that I had the fine motor to put into a little lock and turn. It's so much more integrated now. And I think this is going to continue to increase, right? So the environments are going to learn our individual needs more and more, and that is going to do nothing but benefit our aging workforce, in my opinion, other than some very valid security concerns. Anyway, I get really excited about that slide. We'll talk a little bit about some specific AT for vision impairment, right? We know that's another great need for people as we're aging. So these are just some glare reduction sunglasses, interface with computer screens. Some people find those beneficial, just to reduce glare and to kind of refine our lighting. This image on the top right there is from our Assistive Technology Center. We have some light filters, so they eliminate the glare of fluorescent lighting. The tinted glasses can improve visual acuity and improve contrast sensitivity. So just being able to visually interact with our computer screens more easily and for a longer period of time. Contrast sensitivity is also a very real issue. So bright colors are generally the easiest to see because of their ability to reflect light. So use bright colors as much as possible. But contrast sensitivity is the ability to detect differences between light and dark areas, right? So if you have low vision, increasing the contrast between an object and its background will generally make that object more visible. So enhancing contrast is really one of the simplest, least expensive, most effective modifications that we can implement in an environment and within our interfacing and interacting with a computer. Adjusting the contrast on devices, so that's phones and computers, can really prevent eye strain and enhance vision. So it can allow someone to work longer and be more effective. Solid bright colors like red, orange, and yellow are usually more visible than pastels. So consider that as we're developing documents and developing presentations and web content, all of those areas. Using solid colors as backgrounds can make objects stand out more. So using solid colors instead of patterns, prints, or stripes, that can create a lot of visual confusion. And then contrast controls are built into devices now, like we referenced earlier. So you can customize that very easily to an individual's needs. So just training everybody on how to do that and showing people those options. And then having contrast in the built environment can also really provide safety cues, particularly on steps or when you're entering rooms, to have a different contrast between the trim or on a stair tread so that people can more easily receive that information and make things much safer. And then magnifiers, right? That's another really common way to address some visual disability. Magnifying devices help people with low vision engage more easily in activities like reading standard print, participating in recreation, viewing presentations, because it increases the size of the text and of the objects that they're interfacing with. Magnifiers come in lots of different weights and styles and functional zoom capacities, varying magnification strength. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. And also with illumination function too. So there's a lot of lighted magnifiers and task lamps that can assist with vision in low light conditions. There's also full page magnifiers like this one on the top right, as well as pocket size magnifiers. There's magnifier apps on phones too that are really effective, that can really change how someone is able to interact with the environment. And then there's video magnifiers on the top left there. And those are the ones that use a camera to project the magnified image onto a screen. And then there's also portable and handheld magnifying devices that are battery operated and can help in a more mobile way, right? So going to the grocery and reading items at the grocery, reading menus, or people who are working out in the field and have to access more information that's not, at a workstation.